Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kenneth Jones. I am the Community Relations Coordinator with the Village of Richton Park. In honor of Black History Month, today and throughout the rest of February, we will acknowledge African American figures in the past to present and their contributions to society as a whole. African Americans have been stewards of the American progress and ideals at every stage of our nation's history. Without their sacrifice, ingenuity, and valor, the United States would not be the world leader that it is today. From the national economy built on our backs to the everyday technological advances we rely on, Black history is clearly synonymous with American history as a whole. This progress is American progress. To further this conversation, I would like to welcome everyone to our Black History Month program, where our topic for today will be African American leaders throughout history and their lessons for our lives. Our presenter for today will be historian Dexter Johnson. Not only is he a trustee with the Village of Blue Island, but also a man who believes in the education of our people. Let's extend a warm welcome to Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Well, happy Black History Month to everyone. A lot of us really don't know the meaning of Black History Month and how did it come about. I've heard questions and people talking about it, making and such as why did they pick the shortest month of the year? But it didn't come about as such. Carter G. Woodson, he was born December 19th, 1875, and his passing was April the 3rd, 1950. Carter G. Woodson, he was a historian, an author, a journalist, and he was a founder for the Association for African Americans, Life and History. So initially, Black History celebration was only for 1 week, and it was to celebrate the achievements of Blacks. Some things that was recorded in books, and some, of course, that was left out. But Carter G. Woodson, just to give you a little brief background on him, he was the second Black person to graduate from Harvard with a PhD. The first person or Black person that graduated from Harvard was W.E.B. Du Bois. And he also helped out with American contributions that was overlooked and surpassed because of slavery and things of that nature as they treated us back then. It was a normal, I guess, way of life for them, for us all to be lesser than human. So in 1976, President Gerald Ford, a Republican. So that shows exactly what our President Obama was talking about by being bipartisan, where we can reach across the aisles and get deals and things done for citizens of America. But 1976, President Gerald Ford made Black History Week into a month to celebrate the accomplishments of African Americans in history. Black historians and people that made remarkable strides for us to be where we are today. But sometimes I think when we talk about different people and different topics, that there's a generation gap to where myself and some of the coordinators here, Mike can hear, but for the youth, it kind of falls on deaf ears because those people are paved the way for us in this now and date, modern time, that racism isn't looked at as openly as it used to be. Some of those people who made an impact, I'm just going to name a few. President Obama, Dr. King, Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, Phyllis Wheatley. She was actually a poet, Phyllis Wheatley. She was an African descent and came over and was one of the first Black poets that was featured. Afeni Shakur. Maybe the younger generation can hear me on Afeni Shakur because that was Tupac's mom. Tupac's mom actually defended herself in a bombing because she was linked with the Black Panther Party and 20 others, and she got off. And about a month and a half later, Tupac was born. The next person is famed Frederick Douglass. Nora Neale Hurston. She was a significant person in the creation of the Harlem Renaissance. I'll get back to you on the Harlem Renaissance a little more in detail. We have Thurgood Marshall. We have James Baldwin. James Baldwin was in movies and things of that nature and books. We have Muhammad Ali, Oprah Winfrey, and of course, Harriet Tubman. Muhammad Ali did great strides. I think he was one of the first athletes besides Jesse Owens to bring about a certain awareness of us in our Blackness. He went to Vietnam, actually had some of the POW prisoners, which were Black men, freed. He also spoke highly about not fighting in Vietnam because that they never called him the N-word. They never done anything to him, and he didn't find the reason for to go over there and steal, kill, and destroy them. He lost and got his title stripped because of that, but still came back afterwards, still regained his title as a champion. I was going to pick out a certain African American that's in the history books. We don't hear much about him and his strides to what he's done and contributed to us as a race. And I would like to introduce him. His name is Isaiah Montgomery. He was born a slave May 21st in 1847 on the plantation Hurricane. Today, well, it's called the Davis Bend, but today it's called Davis Island. And it's located right below Vicksburg, Mississippi. It was a large, fertile, they had large, fertile land, lots and lots of acres, thousands and thousands of acres. And it was located right by the Mississippi River. So therefore, the irrigation, they had no problem with water and watering their crops. And he had a diversity of crops besides cotton. He had also tobacco. Tobacco was generated actually from our ancestors from the West Indies, who brought the knowledge of tobacco and the growth of tobacco to the southern states through slavery. So just want to give you a little background on Mr. Isaiah Montgomery. Mr. Isaiah Montgomery, as I stated before, was born on a farm. And in the plantation owner was Joseph Davis. He was a person, they want to, and in writings that I read, said he was a man of small stature, but he had a big heart. He believed in utopia philosophy to where he could get more work and profitability out of his servants, because he said he never called them slaves. They were servants, by giving a little to get more. And he had entrusted to Isaiah's father, which was Ben Davis was his name, and his mom's name was Mary Montgomery. Ben was, his father had a lot of skill sets. He was a mechanic, he was a machinist, and into agriculture as well. So he's very useful around a place such as a plantation. And the owner, Joseph, he found a lot of favor in Ben. And some people use the word as the Negro and things of that nature. But Ben showed a lot of strides into learning how to read and write, which was great in those days to know how to read and write so he could learn and educate himself. And he was also open to go to the library that they had in the mansion. So he encouraged not only himself, but his children, which one was Isaiah, and he had another brother and 3 other sisters. But Ben also was a crafty person. He earned enough money to buy his wife from the slave owner or the servant owner, Joseph, so that she wouldn't have to work in the fields and anything anymore, but stay at home and raise their children. And this was this was his mentality even then. And so even through the hard times and harsh moments of slavery, we still had, we call it now Southern hospitality, or where we favored our families and deeply rooted things, but it's actually an African trait that has been handed down to us. If you visit an African village, poor or well-to-do, when you come there, they're actually servants of you freely from their heart, because this is how they feel. I wish in today's society that we were more like that, and our communities could come together and be a lot stronger than they are. Getting back to Ben earned enough money and enough trust into his owner that he was able to open up a feed store in town, where they came in and bought different materials for the farm or family and things of that nature, and made enough money. By that time, Isaiah was born, and he also believed in education. So Isaiah, being the son of his father, had the same attributes, picked up on things very quickly, became the owner's valet, and did different errands on his own at 13 years old. And as the war was about to come about, it was a situation that happened with, some people call him a terrorist, but I kind of call him a revolutionist, and his name was Nat Turner, a minister at that time, very well educated minister who knew how to read and write, that went through different plantations, killing 50 to 60 whites, children as well. And he said it all came from God. But long story short, they found Nat Turner. He was one of the last to be captured out of his crew of 75, because as he went through the different farms, people joined his clan, his band, and they found him and found him guilty and hung him from a tree. During that time, because of civil unrest and things of that nature, sent a message to up north that something has to be done about slavery. So in short, this is the time that civil war came about for the South. So with all these great things that's going on right now on this hurricane plantation, that the owners now were scattered because of the Union soldiers as well as the rebel soldiers. And it had put a lot of burden on Ben and his father and his family, because they tried to have things maintained, but they couldn't maintain them because there wasn't anybody to buy the goods and things of that nature because of war. And so the owners of the farm, of course, left because in fear of the Union soldiers. So the long story short is that when they came back, when the war was just about over, jailed Joseph, the owner, for 2 years. And in that time, Ben and Isaiah Montgomery tried to hold down the plantation as best they could until he got out. And in the process, they was able to get the plantation back going. And he earned enough money to actually buy part of the plantation back from the owner. Now, understanding Joseph's brother was actually, his brother was going to be the future president, Jefferson Davis. And it is written being that his brother had the power and the influence over a lot of townsmen or a lot of townspeople. So they had a bad story ending. They had a bad hurricane or bad storm, flood, things that wiped out a lot of the crops, and things started to go on a downfall. They had lost a lot of things in Davis Bend plantation, but the good thing was they had another store in Vicksburg, Mississippi, that the other brother ran. So with all that going on, they had to move. So in about 1887, after they became more accomplished in Vicksburg with their revenue and things of that nature, but Isaiah and his cousin Ben Green, they bought 847 acres of swampland in Mississippi, and his mindset was we had a great thing going on the plantation, but everybody on the plantation didn't have entrepreneurship type mindsets. They was only servants. And he reached out to his cousin and stated that, man, we could build something here if we had people with entrepreneur mindsets to build a town. And so therefore, having that mindset, they went and bought the 847 acres of swampland. They had a crew of 14 people that had this same mindset to start clearing the fields and making way for a town. So in this town, well, the name of the town is Mount Bayou, Mississippi. Mount Bayou, Mississippi was the Black utopia of the jewel Mississippi, President Roosevelt stated. And they had their own hospital where they could go to the hospital and did not have to wait for white folks to be serviced first. They could go in with whatever ailment they had and get seen directly. And they had their own stores. They had some crime. They did state that they did have some crime, but they had everything they wanted right there. And that the dollars circulated through the city so many times before it ever left. So that meant that everybody that had something got paid. They had 3 banks in that city, in the small city. And as people, grow up and move away from home until they were grown, and they came back to Mount Bayou as a retirement type of place. But the long story short, he later went on, before he passed away, and got into politics and things of that nature to try to fight for more rights for African American, Black African Americans. Isaiah Montgomery also had a 21-bedroom brick home built in Mount Bayou, sent his kids to different schools to be educated. A couple of them in Ohio, Wilberforce College, which is now it's an HBCU, Oberlin in Ohio. So he believed in education. He continued with that. So in his passing, till this day, they still go to the small cemetery that they have in Mount Bayou. And on the day that he passed away, they would go there and bring a wreath and celebrate, what he has brought to the table. And that's kind of it for what I do want to touch on, though, is a couple of other Black historians that I want to try to bring in some points to. W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, and Frederick Douglass, all great minds. Frederick Douglass wonderful mind, self-taught slave. His mom, he only seen her a few times, and his white father, he never knew. You know, put himself in a box, escaped slavery, and educated himself. But the points I want to make is that even in those times that everybody didn't agree about their own and personal opinions, but they were civil enough to sit there and listen and try to bring about still a positive change. Some things we don't do to this day, because if we don't agree, we end up fighting with each other. And now that we got internet and social media, we're saying negative and really ugly things about each other till it becomes a fight. But now, in this day, the young people don't fight no more; they shoot. So, and they don't do that very well because a lot of innocent people and bystanders take those shots. But what the interesting part about Frederick Douglass and W.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington, Frederick Douglass, W.B. Du Bois was the first Black person to graduate from Harvard, which is an Ivy League school, with a PhD. Carter B. Woodson was the second. But even with that, their mindsets was one that I should stay with white folks in education. I think we should be all in the classroom together, being educated so we can learn their ways, and I guess they can learn our ways, and so we can be better as a people. Where then we have Booker T. Washington stating that we need to be together. And we have to learn who we are first. Who we are and whose we are when we're talking about spirituality. So in order to go into the future or go to the next level, you need to know where you came from in order to go there. And so that was a quiet argument between them. And they had their own way of disseminating things and getting the job done. And they were very strong Black men. You know, they had times that when things just didn't go right, Booker T. they would stand up on top of the desk in a forum and make sure that their word was being heard. And we had leaders, strong leaders in the 60s when we were really receiving, and I guess, you know, we were walking around with shutters on our eyes for a while to receive our Blackness in the 60s for solid movements. And with Martin Luther King being there, Malcolm X at the helm of the ship, even though they had two different philosophies, they wanted the same results. They wanted us to achieve as a people. And even though they had their differences, as well as Booker T, Mr. Du Bois, and Frederick Douglass had their difference, it did not stop them from doing what they had to do for us as a people. They wasn't sold out. They wasn't drawn out. So trying to bring about what I just stated to nowadays effect, how the cause and effect, the cause of the separation of households were even from Africa in a community or communal type of living that we always supported each other. Here we do not have, nowadays, we don't have that support. We figured social media would be a great way for us to be able to gather, find loved ones, things of that nature, even promote your business and to reach out. But the younger generation find it out to my words are Insta lies and fake book, being something that you're not, and just being who you are. You know, greatness sometimes is not achieved overnight, but through a lifetime. And we have to learn that. We have to learn to love each other, because The higher power even tells us that the greatest of all emotions is love. And once we learn how to do that and respect each other, I think we could achieve, our achievements are unlimited. Our achievements will be unlimited, in that the academic achievement gap is starting to shrink. Our wealth achievement gap really hasn't changed that much since the 60s, even though we have a few Black billionaires. We got still a lot of people in poverty, living in poverty. Some of us, instead of going to get educated or finding a job and things of that nature, instead of getting on our knees and praying about those situations, we go to a mailbox and pick up a check that won't last 2 to 3 days before you're broke again. So I think we need to lean and depend on each other even more in these times and days as Black folks. And I'm very thankful for Carter G. Woodson. I'm thankful for Gerald Ford making it from a week to a month, and that we could celebrate every day of living as Black folks and learning from us and each other. And I'd like to thank Mr. Jones and his crew in the city of Richton Park for even doing something of this nature to give knowledge to each other.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Johnson, for that information. Definitely some really good information that I'm sure a lot of people did not know. I know it's definitely some eye-opening information for myself, and definitely made me a lot more interested in Mr. Montgomery and some of his contributions, especially in the state of Mississippi. So we definitely want to thank you for you actually coming and presenting today, and actually giving us your time. We really appreciate that. And for all of the viewers, again, we will be hosting other Black History related events throughout the month. So definitely stay tuned for those, and make sure you follow us on Facebook at the Village of Richton Park, as we always will keep all of our residents updated with the latest information, as well as events that we have planned for this year. And again, we want to thank everyone for tuning in. Make sure you follow us, and also too, make sure you come on out and support some of our future programs that we have in the works that'll be happening within the coming months. So thank you again, and we look forward to having you at our next event here with the Village of Richton Park. Thank you so much, and thank you again as well, Mr. Johnson.